I'm trying to figure out how I can connect up with other people who can help collaborate on doing something with this situation and with this data visualization thing I've worked on. And one point of reference is psychiatrist Ed Hallowell, who specializes in ADD and has written this article and related book on how brain science can save you from the wrong job, which ties up with what educator Ken Robinson talks about. They each have books that basically talk about how it's important to figure out what you're good at and then pursue that. And of course, practicality makes it so that a lot of times people have to multitask or dedicate different hours of the day to different things. But I've ended up in a situation where I'm just completely overwhelmed with the situation. And I've spent a lot of time recording video, trying to explain things, hopefully getting better at explaining things and doing these layouts, which started just on paper and started with literally just laying out books and taking a photograph, like this book on game theory and interpersonal situations that talks about how there are different ways that people can relate to each other, like where one person's in charge, where two people cooperate. There are these things like prisoner's dilemma and the game of chicken and so on, and dealing with threats, joint control, exchanges of different kinds. And it's like I've ended up in this situation where with different people in my life, including my dad, interaction is kind of strained and unusual. And it's like my dad's an anthropologist. I'm trying to figure out how to brand myself as basically, well, among other things, a cognitive anthropologist and a psychological journalist, where I'm using YouTube video and these layouts to kind of explain complex situations and pull together relevant information from different sources. And this ties into this video I was just watching and transcribing onto this layout from this show In Treatment, where the therapist is talking about his third midlife crisis, and where he's talking about a patient where he says, I ask myself all the time if I really know what I think I know about my patients' lives. For example, this one patient, Amy, there are certain patterns that identify themselves from her past, but I cannot shrink her. She's too complicated. Now, I've found this situation where it's for my own life, as well as understanding others and interacting with others, often different people find each other too complicated to just shrink or treat. And a lot of times this is because a person's life situation ties into their various choices, their background, their finances, how their own brain is wired, and all these things. And this occurs in a context of all this interaction with technology, with media that occurs today and that I've grown up with, and younger people are growing up with even more, but everyone is, or most people are exposed to on some level. This interaction actually, in certain respects, changes our minds, our brains, and cognition changes as a result. And this is something a number of people have talked about, and how education has to change along with it. And so this gets into a number of topics where digital video, for example, can be used in psychiatry as well as just kind of making sense of things, and I'm trying to do that. And the thing is, I haven't gone through, or I've dropped out of school at a number of different points due to not learning and trying to figure out how does learning work, how does knowledge work, and finding a lot more information online, in academic journals online, and all these types of things, and videos, lectures from a range of people. And it's a lot more efficient way in many respects to learn than going to school and being exposed to just certain teachers who have access to certain information and see their jobs as presenting just like one discipline. And I'm trying to, for a number of reasons, including just because of it's how my mind works, I'm looking holistically across the internet, across different branches of knowledge, and trying to learn about things like how do words work, how do we conceptualize and interpret each other as people, and how does motivation work, and mental energy, how do people decide to do what they do, where a lot of cognition is kind of implicit and just kind of flows from habits or patterns or the situation one's in, and yet it's possible to become more conscious of one's choices and selections, which is a big thing I'm interested in. And yet this has led me to sort of this decision overload on how to deal with my life situation and how to communicate with others. And meanwhile, being broke, having my housing in jeopardy, and all these other things, and basically not having any place to go poses a major problem. And it's like I need to figure out how I can earn a living based on what I can effectively do. And I'm interested in using YouTube, like others have done, as a way to sort of branch out, and sort of just like many people get on TED, give TED Talks or TEDx Talks or talks at Google or write books on all these different topics. I found that by looking around at a lot of what different people have written and said, a lot of it sort of corresponds to things I've thought about, and it's kind of like when everything's been said, so to speak, or a lot of different things have been said, it's like what's my role, or what can I do that's new or different? And this ties into this discussion by Dale Stevens and Michael Ellsberg, who've both talked about and written about taking a path other than college. And I've taken a path other than college, and yet my interest, and well, I've been in and out of college, and I've documented like what I've learned at different points, certain of the papers I've written at different points that often reference basically why I've dropped out, or why it makes sense to do something different. And yet the question is where to go now, and this is something I'm really struggling with. And yet I find that a lot of people in my life are basically like, it's simple, you're making it too complicated. And some things just are kind of complicated,